Chapter 517 Unrestrained Innate Talent. Mo Fan had overdone it this time. He finally knew how dumb it was not to research his opponent before the battle. However, even if he knew about her psychic element, he would only be less surprised and miserable. Either way, he was totally clueless about how to fight against a psychic magician. Ding Yumian's casting speed was extremely fast, almost instantaneous. Mo Fan could not even draw the star orbits, let alone the star patterns. No wonder the girl was able to roughly read his mind. The psychic element made her almost unbeatable in most duels. Fiery Fist. Ding Yumian did not give Mo Fan any chance to cast his fire spells. Meanwhile, she took hold of the opportunity to finish a fire element star pattern while Mo Fan was still affected by the soul impact. Her fringes drifted in the wind before her forehead as a surge of heat energy spread out from the center of the dueling ground to the edges of the boundary. A huge fiery bracelet appeared on her wrist following a groan. As the fiery fist approached Mo Fan, the spell somehow covered a greater surface area than usual, looming over an area a few tens of meters wide across from where Mo Fan was standing. How is her fiery fist covering such a huge area? Mo Fan cried out in astonishment. He was around 100 meters away from Ding Yumian. Normally, a fiery fist could mostly cover an area with a diameter of 20 meters from 100 meters away. However, Mo Fan discovered that even though the diameter of the fiery fist was not as crazy as 40 meters across, the area it covered was still significantly bigger. It was impossible for him to escape from the fiery fist's range with his bare feet. Mo Fan, who had no chance of casting any spell, was forced to activate the blood tabi. Despite that, the flames still managed to reach Mo Fan, who just made it out of the range of the spell, as he clenched his teeth from the pain of the burn. He managed to dodge the attack, yet his forehead was covered in sweat when he looked back and saw the burning pit with a diameter of close to 40 meters. Is this her innate talent? The area of her fire spell was almost double that of any ordinary magician. Mo Fan was astounded. He did not dare to underestimate his opponent any further. That being said, him being serious did not make any difference at all. Ding Yumian's fighting style was invincible. Mo Fan was able to dodge the attacks while his blood tabi was still effective, but once it was on cooldown, he would have a hard time dodging her fiery fist. Fiery Fist. 9 halls. Normally, Ding Yumian was like a fragile water lily, but her temperament when fighting was imposing and aggressive, not giving Mo Fan any chance to catch his breath. She had begun to draw a star pattern once again. The outline of the star pattern was already completed under her feet. With only a few more strokes to finish the remaining star orbits, she would awaken the formidable power of the 9 halls. The effect of the soul impact finally wore off. However, when Mo Fan was finally able to cast a spell, Ding Yumian would be less than seconds away from completing her channeling. The time was nowhere enough for him to cast an intermediate spell. Mo Fan only had a chance to cast a basic spell. When he saw Ding Yumian on the verge of completing the fiery fist, 9 halls, Mo Fan almost lost his calm and used his shadow element. The fleeing shadow was his only chance to escape to somewhere safe. No way, I won't use my trump card even if I lose the battle. Mo Fan forfeited the thought of using his shadow element in front of the crowd. He drew the star pattern of the summoning element at his fastest speed. Dimensional Summoning. Swift Star Wolf. 7 lunar white stars appeared before Mo Fan. A gap was torn apart as the stars were joined together in orbits. A magnificent wolf leapt out from the gap. His starry blue hair drifted elegantly in the heat wave. Stop howling, start running. Mo Fan yelled at the swift star wolf who was still trying to declare his presence. The just-arrived swift star wolf was totally clueless about the situation. However, when he saw a woman not far away slamming her fiery fist full of energy onto the ground, and he sensed the overwhelming energy below the ground, he immediately fled into the distance. The fire pillars were twice as thick of the normal fiery fist, 9 halls. The fiery flames surged ferociously as the fire pillars rose into the air from the ground. The fiery fist, 9 halls was a destructive spell with a huge area of effect to begin with, hence the flames produced by the fire pillars devoured almost half of the dueling ground instantly. It was impossible to find a safe spot. The swift star wolf carried Mo Fan away, fleeing like a coward. The beast groaned in pain as he suffered damage from the fierce flames. Fortunately, the swift star wolf was a very agile creature. He barely found the gaps between the fire pillars and rolling flames. Mo Fan was wise to summon the swift star wolf when he only had the chance of casting a basic spell. Otherwise, he would never have been able to escape from a 9 halls with twice the area. Humph! If it weren't for his double innate elements, he would have lost by now. Huang Xingli blurted out in dissatisfaction from up among the spectators. Without the summoning element, Mo Fan would have lost the duel after being forced into a corner. Meanwhile, Mo Fan, who was crying out in pain because of the flames, had finally experienced the strength of those in the top 10. The mountain-like pressure had not given him a chance to catch a breath yet. The focus necklace is able to protect me from her soul impact once. Ding Yumian won't know this. I have only one chance to win this battle. Despite the position Mo Fan was in, his experience in battle kept him from losing his calm. It was difficult to utilize all his elements when fighting against Ding Yumian. Luckily, the focus necklace which Ding Xiao had given him was able to resist a psychic attack once. It was Mo Fan's greatest defense. He had to plan his attack carefully to win the duel with it. Otherwise, if he failed to inflict serious damage to Ding Yumian with the opportunity given by the focus necklace, it was better for him to concede. I have no choice but to let the duel drag on, and wait until Ding Yumian begins to panic. The swift star wolf can lift the burden off for the time being, thought Mo Fan. The swift star wolf was already injured from the burns, which severely impacted his speed. However, the swift star wolf was still able to provide assistance. After all, Ding Yumian's soul impact was not so effective against him. Swift star wolf, keep her busy, Mo Fan ordered. The swift star wolf sprinted forward. He seemed fairly agitated after being burned, and was planning to get his revenge on Ding Yumian. Ding Yumian remained calm facing the ferocious wolf. She suddenly closed her eyes and drew a star pattern rapidly under her feet. Spirit ripple. Pacify. Ding Yumian's eyes sprang open, her pupils clear like water, and a gentle ripple slowly spread into the eyes of the angry swift star wolf. Chapter 518 Counterattacking with the Focus Necklace. The swift star wolf was sprinting in an imposing manner with winds racing around him, like an arrow being released from a bow. As the first rippling wave crossed the swift star wolf, the creature maintained his pace, yet his eyes flickered with a hint of doubt. As the second wave came by, the swift star wolf's savagery was erased, replaced by a gentler look. As the third wave of ripples struck, the swift star wolf suddenly slowed down and lost half of his imposing manner. Finally, the swift star wolf arrived before Ding Yumian as the fourth wave of ripple was produced. The ferocious look that the swift star wolf previously had completely disappeared. Even the claw he had raised to execute the attack had dropped to the ground in the process. Good doggy, Ding Yumian reached out her hand and fondled the disheveled hair on the swift star wolf's neck. The swift star wolf was no longer a fierce creature, but had completely turned into a husky. He stuck out his tongue and seemed extremely comfortable when the girl fondled his hair. Go play by yourself, whispered Ding Yumian to the swift star wolf. The swift star wolf was extraordinarily obedient. He waved his stiff tail and ran outside of the boundary and sat on the ground, like an enormous sled dog. The only thing missing was a collar on his neck. Mo Fan wore a disgusted look when he saw it happen. Was that summoned beast really his fierce, belligerent swift star wolf? Before at the drifting sand river, Xinxia had been casting psychic element, pacify all along. Mo Fan had already thought that the spell was too good to be true, yet he never knew it was so incredible. She somehow turned his ferocious summoning beast into a meek dog. Can't you be any more useful? Mo Fan could not stand it any longer. He sent the swift star wolf back to his own dimension. The truth was, he was afraid that Ding Yumian would somehow convince his swift star wolf to bite him instead. Luckily, Ding Yumian was not an advanced magician like the demoness. Otherwise, if she cast the psychic element's mind control on the Swift Star Wolf, a creature would actually betray its master. The Swift Star Wolf was hopeless. Mo Fan had no choice but to focus on his plan on utilizing the focus necklace. It was his only way to win the duel. Fiery Fist. 9 halls. Ding Yumian was a madwoman when it came to duels. As the fiery fist that was twice its usual size slammed into the ground, the faint brown flames produced by the 9 fire pillars covered the entire area. The fire seed producing the faint brown flames was not as powerful as the rose flame, yet Ding Yumian's outstanding innate talent left Mo Fan with no room to escape. A fire pillar suddenly jetted out from the ground underneath Mo Fan. He initially thought he had already left the coverage of the spell, yet the fire pillar that was twice as thick as normal took Mo Fan by surprise. When Mo Fan realized that he was still in the range of the spell, the fire pillar had already knocked him into the air. Falling from the sky, Mo Fan suffered the burns of the flames nearby. The clothes on his upper body were burned into ashes, exposing his scorched skin. Mo Fan felt himself suffering from a concussion as he landed on the ground, yet he rose to his feet like an invincible cockroach despite the remaining flames produced by the fire pillars still burning around him. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Ding Yumian glanced at Mo Fan with a hint of astonishment. "You're still not using your equipment to protect you under such circumstances?" she asked him. She could not tell if it was because of Mo Fan's outstanding fire resistance from his soul seed, or the fact that having 3 elements actually made him stronger, that he was still able to stand up after being struck by the fire pillar. Normally, her opponents would be half crippled after suffering a direct hit from the fire pillar. "How could I say no since you're so eager to see my body?" Mo Fan replied with a grin. "You've got a smooth tongue, but you won't be able to stand for the next month if you don't use your equipment to protect yourself from my next attack," said Ding Yumian coldly. Mo Fan remained in his spot. He had already started to draw a star pattern. 2 blazing red star orbits intersected one another, forming the outline of a fiery star pattern. Countless stars began to appear around them, as a bright line connected them together. "It's no use." Ding Yumian knew Mo Fan had been driven into a dead end. As a matter of fact, Mo Fan knew his equipment would not make any difference, since he was unable to cast any spells. The armor would only buy him some time. Ding Yumian thought Mo Fan had given up when she saw him casting the spell. She had given Mo Fan some time to draw a star pattern, as she was trying to see what the guy was up to. However, as the 4th orbit was completed, Ding Yumian had no intention of letting him continue further. Her psychic star orbits was completed almost instantly. The soul impact produced an invisible ray of energy, dashing in Mo Fan's direction at lightning speed. Mo Fan's body was unharmed, but his mind immediately suffered a great blow. The stars that were being aligned rapidly suddenly fled in all directions at the impact of the psychic attack, completely ignoring his control. Focus. The necklace on Mo Fan's chest suddenly emitted an ocean blue glow. The energy entered Mo Fan's mind. Instead of constructing a mental wall to protect him against the attack, it entered deep into his mind and improved his focus. The soul impact simply worked by inflicting a paralyzing pain on one's mind, in order to stop the magician from being able to control their energy due to the pain. However, the focus necklace was able to improve its bearer's focus significantly. The pain was not reduced, but the magician's endurance was improved. The stars fled in fear, yet Mo Fan used brute force to force them back into positions. The star pattern almost crumbled while the 5th orbit was being constructed. However, the help from the focus necklace managed to pull the stars back in time. The 5th orbit was finally completed, and the 6th orbit started to form. A focus magic tool? Ding Yumian finally realized why Mo Fan dared to cast a spell in front of her. It was too late to cast another soul impact. Besides, under the effects of the focus necklace, the soul impact might not be enough to interrupt the channeling. "It's my turn to attack." Mo Fan was engulfed in wild, blazing flames. Even the air surrounding him was set aflame. Rose flame. Fiery fist. 9 halls. Chapter 519. It was meant for external application. The area of Mo Fan's fiery fist, 9 halls, was obviously smaller than Ding Yumian's, yet its power was greater. The high-temperature flames spread to the barrier. The spectators could clearly feel the heat and the strength of the rose flame that belonged to the brute force magician on the dueling ground. Ding Yumian, standing in the midst of the fiery first, 9 halls, did not hesitate. A suit of light armor quickly wrapped around her. The armor was blue, with a soft, smooth surface. It was not made of the skin and bones of demon beasts, but from some kind of plants. Perhaps since she was a fire magician, the armor did not appear to be fire-resistant. As a matter of fact, it did not provide any protection against Mo Fan's spell, whose power was multiplied 2.5 times by the rose flame. Ding Yumian had no choice but to back off to the edge of the boundary, outside of the range of the flames. Mo Fan was well aware of Ding Yumian's fighting capacity. Now that he had finally begun his counterattack, he had no intention of giving Ding Yumian a chance to cast Soul Impact again. While his fiery fist, 9 halls, was still in effect, while the focus necklace was still effective, Mo Fan began to draw another star pattern. Purple-black lightning orbits flickered around Mo Fan's body, which rapidly combined into a fierce star pattern. Qin-Jun, Thunderbolt, Wild Strikes. The lightning star pattern was still under Mo Fan's feet, yet the crazily violent lightning energy had already gathered above Ding Yumian. A huge stormy cloud floated above the girl, with bolts flickering like serpents within it. As Mo Fan pointed his finger, the black lightning ray fiercely struck Ding Yumian. The entire place shook wildly under Qin-Jun's space-vibrating effect. More lightning strikes descended to the ground, striking Ding Yumian's armor and the ground around her. A huge part of the dueling area was shattered into pieces, spattering in the air. Ding Yumian basically had no movement spells. She could only resist with her armor and shield equipment. However, the third-level intermediate lightning spell was stronger than the fiery fist, 9 halls, especially when Ding Yumian was the only target enduring the damage. Her armor was almost shattered into pieces by the lightning strikes. The wild lightning strikes turned Ding Yumian's surroundings into electric fields. After remaining passive trying to defend herself, Ding Yumian's entire body turned numb. The arcs of electricity cracked loudly. The whole corner of the stage was destroyed beyond recognition. Ding Yumian, who was still protected by her shield and armor, was trembling hard. Her armor was already ineffective against Mo Fan's 9 halls, so it stood no chance against the penetrating, ferocious power of the lightning. Pieces of blue armor slowly peeled away from her. Ding Yumian tried to brace herself with a pale expression. "You can no longer defend yourself," Mo Fan stepped forward. Lightning strikes in the shape of serpents floated around him. At Mo Fan's command, the lightning serpents lunged at Ding Yumian fiercely. Her destroyed armor was nowhere enough to defend her against the lightning strikes. "You were willing to suffer from the burns despite being able to use your focus necklace earlier, waiting for the chance to execute your counterattack," observed Ding Yumian, breathing heavily. Determined, reckless. This was Ding Yumian's appraisal toward Mo Fan. Having both lightning and fire elements had turned Mo Fan into a killing machine. He was able to follow up the destructive fiery fist, 9 halls, with an even stronger lightning strike, Wild Strikes. Lightning was even more ruthless than fire. Ding Yumian had rarely encountered opponents with such a heavy offensive focus. Her armor was designed to be soft and nimble, allowing her, since she did not have any movement spells, to move freely and not require her to remain stationary. Normally, the expensive armor was enough to block a wave of full attacks from her opponents, yet the light armor stood no chance against a pure brute force magician. Once Mo Fan landed his attacks, Ding Yumian had no chance of fighting back. The two most destructive spells in the intermediate level. Sigh, if Ding Yumian had heavy armor, Mo Fan would be the one losing the duel. There aren't so many ifs, it's a victory for him. You're right, but this Demon King has already leveled up 2 of his elements to the 3rd level. What a surprise. The outcome was decided. Mo Fan was extremely passive at the start of the battle. Either his spells were interrupted by the soul impact, or he was burned by Ding Yumian's fire. Unfortunately, since Ding Yumian's secondary element was psychic, it also implied that her offense was quite simple. It was fairly difficult to defeat Mo Fan, who had a high resistance to fire, in a short period of time. Most importantly, Mo Fan, who had pretended he had no chance of fighting back, suddenly activated the focus magic tool, and utilized both his lightning and fire to land destructive blows and shatter Ding Yumian's defense. Ding Yumian had assumed that she had already won the battle, but she was overwhelmed in the end. Mo Fan only had one chance to strike back, but he only needed one chance. Mo Fan is the winner! Wei Rong declared the outcome of the duel, leaving the crowd bewildered. Those who cheered the loudest were all new students. The highest that any other new student had managed to get was Mu Nujiao, who just crossed the 50th rank. Yet, as expected of the Demon King Mo Fan, he had defeated an expert in the top 10. Everyone had witnessed Ding Yumian's strength. The truth was, even those who considered themselves experts would lose before casting a single spell. Even with a focus magic tool, they would not be able to counterattack using the combo of the two strongest killing spells in the intermediate level. The truth was, Mo Fan was extremely relieved after securing the win. If he had not improved his Lightning Nebula to the 3rd level last month, he would surely have lost the duel against anyone in the top 10. Thunderbolt. Yaksha's strength was not as formidable as the Thunderbolt, Wild Strikes. My fire has hidden side effects. Use this, it will eliminate the threat. Ding Yumian took a brief rest to recover slightly before throwing a faint brown serum into Mo Fan's hands. Its color was similar to the color of her flames. Mo Fan was covered in wounds. On the other hand, Ding Yumian did not seem injured, apart from her fatigued look. Thanks. Mo Fan received the serum, and drank it in one go. Ding Yumian glanced at him with a blank expression. Mo Fan thought she was attracted by his straightforwardness, not to mention that his perfect body was still exposed. He immediately wore a seemingly attractive smile that he thought was enough to charm thousands of girls. Ding Yumian was startled, but took out another serum and said calmly, "This thing is meant for external application." The blossoming smile on Mo Fan's face suddenly stiffened. Chapter 520 The Quiet, Handsome Man. Ah! Ouch! That hurts. Softer, softer. Mo Fan's cries of agony from the infirmary continued to echo down the halls. Teacher Bai Mei checked Mo Fan's wounds once again, making sure he did not miss anything, before allowing Mo Fan to put on his clothes. The serum that Ding Yumian gave you was quite effective. It completely got rid of the hidden side effects in your body. That being said, the burns are quite serious. It seems like your flesh is quite solid. Any other magician would have fallen unconscious from the pain, said Bai Mei. Maybe my body is becoming resistant since I have been burned many times before, conjectured Mo Fan. Maybe. Teacher Bai Mei, can you please treat my useless summoned beast, too? He's injured as well. I'm not a vet, said Bai Mei with a dark face. Mo Fan almost felt like he had risen as one of the conquerors of the school after securing the 10th rank. Every student, both new or old, recognized him. Some stayed away from him. Some purposely fawned upon him to get closer to him. Among the older students, Mo Fan was described as arrogant and proud. Among the new students, Mo Fan was highly respected, and almost treated as their leader. After all, Mo Fan was the representative of their batch who had secured a spot in the top 10. Usually, it was quite common for the new students to be picked on by the old students, be it from not being aware of the rules, or not experienced enough to handle the duels. Their resources would be taken away, too. However, Mo Fan's achievements completely motivated the new students. There were factions among the students too, but Mo Fan did not join any of them. As such, many factions were holding out an olive branch to Mo Fan, sending out their people to try and convince Mo Fan to join them. Luckily, a lot of the factions were well aware that Mo Fan had no intention to join any of them. The average ones simply took note of him, while the reputable ones knew that Mo Fan was living in the same apartment as the Mu family's daughter, thus they simply did not bother to waste their time on him. However, the peaceful days did not last long. Some strong factions began to reach out their hands towards Mo Fan. Someone even took hold of the opportunity to reveal that Mo Fan was chosen to be a provisional candidate for the World College Tournament by the higher levels internally. It immediately placed Mo Fan in the center of the limelight once again. The top 10 in the Fire School were basically ranked in the top 100 of the entire Pearl Institute. The experts in Pearl Institute agreed that the new student was fairly talented, yet he was still a distance away from being comparable to the top-tier students in Pearl Institute. Those that were concerned about the World College Tournament knew clearly that the candidates selected to represent their country must have strong leadership. Even the top 3 in every element could not make it, so why was a new student worthy of being given a spot? The guy had only entered the top 10 in his element school. It was uncertain if he was even ranked in the top 100 in the whole institute. Yet none of the students ranked top 10 in the institute were selected as provisional candidates. What right did he have to be selected? Could it be that he was the true son of the director of the Magic Education Department? Have you heard? Demon King Mo Fan is a provisional candidate. He's been given a spot to take part in the World College Tournament. Bullshit. The candidates representing our country are the strongest that have been selected among all famous institutes to represent our country and compete against the world. Let's not even mention that Mo Fan has just entered the top 10 in his element school. Even if he's top 10 in the entire institute, the top 1 and 2 from the other institutes are also competing for the spot. He's so far away from making the list. I think so too, but it was said that the source is reliable. Reliable sources, experts. Those are the ones you shouldn't believe at all. Lots of news was spread wildly in the school. Everyone was discussing Mo Fan's achievement of securing a spot in the top 10, but the news of him being a provisional candidate for the World College Tournament completely took over. Mo Fan was initially enjoying being respected by the new students and teachers, but when the news broke out, every student's eyes became bloodshot when they were looking at him, as if a plague had just broken out in the school. Standing so high up from all the flattering, it's only a matter of time until you fall to your death. A guy like you is a provisional candidate? Even those from the same institute can beat you up, let alone the experts from other institutes. So that's the provisional candidate? He looks normal to me. Mo Fan was totally annoyed by the voices around him. He felt a strong urge to find the person who leaked the news and beat the crap out of him. However, it also showed how important the spot was to everyone. Both the experts who were competing for the spot and those who were envious at him despite having no chance to make it at all cared a lot about the World College Tournament. On second thought, it made total sense. The World College Tournament was held conjunctively by the magic associations of all 5 continents, and the most renowned institutes of magic across the world. Even though the teachers were not willing to solely rely on the outcome of the tournament to criticize the performance of each country, the young magicians were extremely passionate and competitive, hence the World College Tournament every year was super exciting, grabbing the attention of the whole world. The disciples of renowned families tried desperately to earn their reputations in their schools, yet nothing was as significant as taking part in the World College Tournament. Even as a reserve participant, the family which the participant was from would still benefit a lot from it. Normally, the factions would only put extra focus on Mo Fan because he had shown outstanding performance at school. However, after the news about him being a provisional candidate was made public, Mo Fan suddenly became a hot product. Every faction was keen to convince him to join them, even though they had not confirmed the validity of the news. As a result, the people at school were jealous of him, but the factions outside of school were extending their olive branches. Meanwhile, Mo Fan's only desire was to be a quiet, handsome man. Mo Fan only learned some time later that Tang Zhong, the head of the magic court, was one of the authorities who had a vote in selecting the candidates. Tang Yue had already mentioned to Mo Fan about some gift she had prepared for him, which was simply the fact that she already knew her grandfather was voting for Mo Fan to be selected. Somewhat coincidentally, someone who had a vote in selecting the candidates from the Magic Palace had retired, thus he had given his vote to Councilman Zhu Meng. Meanwhile, As a councilman, Zhu Meng also had a vote in his hand. As a result, the person in charge of the Magic Palace, whom Mo Fan scolded a few times, ended up with 2 votes. Basically, any student with 4 votes was very likely confirmed to be selected. Tang Zhang had voted for Mo Fan, and Councilman Zhu Meng, who felt the urge to redeem himself from his mistake of trying to kill the black totem snake, ended up giving the 2 votes to Mo Fan, too. As a result, Mo Fan, who now had 3 votes, was basically a provisional candidate. As the selection for the World College Tournament was about to take place, as all the top students in those famous institutes were competing fiercely for a spot, one could simply imagine the hilarious expressions they had when they learned that someone was chosen internally as a candidate. For example, Dongfang Lai, who was ranked first on the Fire School's ranking, was still trying to earn his nomination.